Member for Davenport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a true honour for me to rise in the House today to speak on the Fall Economic Statement, Bill C-32, on behalf of the citizens of my riding of Davenport. To remind those who might be watching the speech, the Fall Economic Statement provides insight on Canada's economic outlook and outlines the government's intention moving forward. The Fall Economic Statement also builds on the fiscal and economic work already underway in Canada to make life more affordable for Canadians, to build a stronger economy, and to prepare for what lies ahead. So, Mr. Speaker, it's always good also to take stock of what the current context is. We have high inflation due to 2.5 years of historic turmoil, including the after effects of a pandemic, the current destabilizing geopolitical situation as a result of Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, the energy crisis, and the impacts of climate change, to name just a few. I am very, very proud of how our federal government has stepped up to support Canadians during the pandemic. We were generous of our support. Some say it's too generous, but I feel very good about the decisions that we've made. I'm also very supportive of the investments and the additional supports to Canadians that we've been making over the last year. National childcare is now in the process of being implemented, which in my home province of Ontario and in the city that I live in, Toronto, will see childcare costs reduced by 50% in December of this year. This is huge, 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 not only for the families in Davenport, but right across this country. We've seen an increase of 10% for seniors, 10% in the OAS for seniors over 75. We've seen a doubling of the Canada Student Grant for post-secondary students, among many, many other targeted supportive measures. And more recently, Mr. Speaker, as you all know, we've doubled the GST credit for the next 6 months. 11 million Canadians received some additional funding this last Friday. And then we have the dental care benefit and the housing benefit winding its way through the Senate. And we've also announced that students who have Canada student loans do not need to start repaying their loans until they've earned $40,000, which is up from $25,000. So all of these measures will go a long way to help Canadians who are struggling with the rising cost of living. I know I hear from Davenport residents every day. They do worry about the prices. They're appreciative of the support the federal government is giving, but they're also hoping that the prices come down in the near future. So the Fall Economic Statement puts forward a number of additional measures to support Canadians and to grow our economy, one that works for everyone. And I wish I had more time, but I'll only be able to cover 2 or 3 key measures. So I'm going to cover immigration, business investment incentives, and growing the clean, green energy economy in Canada. So, the Minister of Immigration, Mr. Speaker, a couple of weeks ago announced new immigration levels for Canada that would see us move to invite 500,000 new immigrants to Canada by 2025. This is going to help with the persistent labor shortages that we continue to have, especially in healthcare, construction, and manufacturing. It will also help with ensuring that we continue to have a strong welfare system. Someone that's indicated to me that about 10 years ago, we had 1 retiree for every 7 workers in Canada, and now it's down to 1 retiree for every 3 workers. So if we actually want to continue to have a strong social welfare system, we have to make sure that we are replacing our workforce. So the Fall Economic Statement, more specifically, is going to increase some money into the immigration system that will increase the capacity to ensure that applications are processed as quickly as possible and to eliminate backlogs. And it's also going to invest in systems that we need to help make sure that we bring in the talent and the skills that we need. So the details are the federal government has committed $1.6 billion over 6 years, and that's for the processing and settlement of new permanent residents, and then an additional $50 million in 2022-2023 to address ongoing application backlogs, which I can assure you so many of our offices have, and it's very frustrating to try to deal with them, but it's wonderful that we continue to put additional resources to address this issue. And I think I'd want to note as well, Mr. Speaker, that we are bringing in a historic number of immigrants and refugees. We should be very proud that over the last 3 years, Canada has settled the highest number of refugees in the world. Not the highest number per capita, but the highest number of refugees in the world for each of the last 3 years. It is something that I'm very proud of. We believe that diversity truly is a strength. We truly believe that the increased diversity makes us a stronger and better country. The next thing I want to talk about, Mr. Speaker, something I worry a lot about is the lack of business investment by our businesses in Canada. I'm sad to say that business investment in Canada is about half of what it is in the United States. And I was reading a few reports online, and C.D. Howe has put out a report recently, and I agree with a number of the things that it says. One of the things it says is business investment is so weak that capital so weak that the labor force is falling, and the implications for incomes and competitiveness are ominous. I think I wrote that quote a little wrong, but basically it reaffirms the fact that business investment is very weak in Canada, and the fact that it has huge implications for our competitiveness both today and tomorrow. I'd also want to say that over the last 10 years, when we've had historically low interest rates, our businesses in general have not invested in research or innovation or in increasing wages. And so the government needs to step in and take some action. And so one of the key things that we're doing, and we're introducing this in the fall economic statement, is to introduce a corporate level 2% tax rate that would apply to all share buybacks by public corporations in Canada. And this is a similar measure that was introduced in the United States. So I think this is, it's estimated that this measure will increase federal revenues by $2.1 billion over 5 years, while also encouraging corporations to reinvest their profits in workers, in innovation, and in their own businesses in terms of growth. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe this is a great first step. I think far more needs to be done to ensure competitiveness in Canada. And I think that there's a number of additional measures that we are looking at and are considering as we're running up into federal budget 2023. Our future economic prosperity depends on us getting this right. The next thing I want to talk a little bit about is climate change and growing.
Appel au règlement, the honourable member for Saskatoon West.
Mr. Speaker, I hate to be a nag, but it looks like we do not have quorum in the House.
We'll go for quorum, so let's start the count. There we go. I believe we have a point of order from the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I would just point out that there are several Liberals that contribute to this quorum, but virtually no Conservatives, so might be worth.
The Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Mr. Speaker, I believe it is not proper to call out the presence of or the absence of anyone in the House, and so I would also make note. That it is the Liberal job to actually do the work in the House, and with their NDP lapdogs, it's not being done properly.
Thank you. In order. Okay, the Honourable Member for Kingston and the Islands.
I'm sorry. I want to apologize for pointing at the fact that there are virtually no Conservatives here. I apologize.
All right, I know we do this in laughter. We are not supposed to point out the absence or whether the member is in chamber or not. Quorum call should be that, where we count the members that are here to make sure that quorum is here, and not to underline who is and who isn't. And you don't need to apologize again. I think the member is covered because I'm looking at the time that we need to get a number of speakers in, and I know the member for Davenport was wrapping up her thoughts. She has about 2 minutes and 53 seconds left, so I'm sure. I think she was starting to wrap up. She had a couple great ideas there, so we're looking forward to the rest of her discourse. The Honourable Member for Davenport.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. And I have lots more to say, but I know I only have less than 3 minutes left. The next thing I want to point out in the fall economic statement, because Davenport they're very passionate climate activists. They really feel very strong that we need to move as aggressively and as urgently as possible towards meeting our net zero by 2050 targets. So the fact that there are some measures in the fall economic statement that is going to accelerate us decarbonizing our economy and meeting our climate change goals, I think is as welcome news to them. We were all, I think, alarmed when we heard our Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, say the clock is ticking, we're in the fight of our lives, we're losing, greenhouse gas emissions keep growing, global temperatures keep rising, and our planet is fast approaching tipping points that will make climate chaos irreversible. So it's incumbent on all of us to take as many measures as possible, Mr. Speaker. So I'm pleased to say that the Fall Economic Statement proposes major investment tax credits for clean technology and clean hydrogen, which will make it more attractive for businesses in Canada to invest in technology and to produce the energy that will help to power a net zero global economy. So, Fall Economic Statement 2022 proposes refundable tax credit equal to 30% of the capital cost investment in the following: electricity generation systems, stationary electricity storage systems, low carbon heat equipment, industrial zero emissions vehicles and related charging or refueling equipment, among other things. And I do want to note, Mr. Speaker, that the Department of Finance is going to continue to consult on additional eligible technologies. We, of course, are introducing these measures not only because we want to meet our net zero target by 2050, but also it's in response to the adoption of the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States and ensuring that we remain competitive both in the current and future economy. And maybe, given the fact that I only have less than a minute left, I'll maybe mention two other small measures, but I think that they're significant ones that are going to be helpful to individuals, to all Canadians across the country. First is the elimination of interest on Canada student loans and the Canada apprenticeship loans. I will tell you that anything we can do to help students start their lives without debt or as a minimal debt as possible is going to be helpful. And the second is the new quarterly Canada Workers Benefit, which is $4 billion over 6 years. And we're going to be issuing that Canada Worker Benefit quarterly, which will be helpful and put money into the pockets of low-income Canadians sooner than later. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak on the Fall Economic Statement on behalf of the residents of Davenport. I would urge my colleagues on the other side to support this bill as expeditiously as possible. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay.